Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at the Rock Island Auction Company taking a look at some of the guns that they're going to be selling in their upcoming April of 2018 premiere auction. And today we have what I'm calling William McCarty's Peculiar Revolver. This is kind of funny in that it's gone a bit full circle. About 5 years ago in 2013 I wrote a blog post about this particular gun because a reader had sent me a copy of the patent for it. At the time, I didn't know of any actually in existence, and then here at Rock Island, they actually have an example of one for sale. Now, I've also found documentation of at least one other that was made. It's documented in Louis Winant's book, Firearms Curiosa, from, I believe it's the 1950s or 60s. So there are at least two of them that were made. But what makes this very unusual, besides obviously its shape, is that this is, well, this was an early attempt at a high-capacity revolver. Now, there have been a lot of different ways people have gone about trying to do that, whether it's with multiple barrels, 2 or even 3 barreled revolvers that have cylinders with 2 or 3 sets of cartridges, and that can give you like an 18 or 20 shot revolver of the sort of traditional style. What McCarty did was come up with basically a radial turret revolver holding 18 rounds. So underneath this, there is actually a revolving wheel here with cylinders pointing out in, well, radially from the center spoke. Each one of those cylinders holds a cartridge. I'm pretty sure this was for a 22 long rifle, or maybe 22 short, potentially. And every time you pull the trigger, it's a double action trigger pull, so it rotates the cylinder and fires around. Now, there's no good way to reload this, but I can take it apart and show you how this thing actually works on the inside. What doesn't really come across in the patent so well, but certainly does in person, is just how big and how heavy this thing is. And, well, what does come across in the patent is that it looks like a pretty awkward thing to actually handle. And that is certainly true. So you kind of do this, I guess. It's not entirely clear what the best way to hold this thing is. There is an outer framework here, so you can have the cylinder rotating inside and have some sort of better grip designed onto this thing. Maybe McCarty was planning to do that later on, beyond his first 1 or 2 prototypes, but never did. So anyway. The back side is pretty much identical to the front side. We do have sights on it, remarkably, right there. And that's why there is this rib up on the top. And then the barrel is at this angle because of the angle of the cylinders. So let me take it apart and show you the inside. This top plate is actually threaded on. There we go. It's a little bit tight, but we can take this off like so. That's just a top cover plate. Then we have one little piece right here, and that's going to come out like so. Put that aside. And then if I line up that little firing pin with one of these notches, I can drop the cylinder out. So there is our 18 shot cylinder, and you can see that these chambers are not exactly perpendicular to the axis of the cylinder. They're actually kind of angled like this. And that allows you to get a longer cartridge into a narrower ring. Going a little bit deeper, we can take these 2 screws out and remove the cover plate on the trigger mechanism. There we go. The firing mechanism on this really is quite simple. Hammer, we have a little spring-loaded firing pin right here, and the trigger. There is a return spring on the trigger. That's this piece right here. Goes into that little hole in the trigger itself so that when you pull the trigger, it tends to reset back. We have this finger right here on the trigger bar, that pushes on these little notches, and that's what actually indexes the cylinder. So when you pull the trigger, it first rotates the cylinder one position, then it fires. This little spring, little flap spring here with that detent on it, that locks the cylinder in position. So on the back side of the cylinder, facing down there, we have these little holes that line up and get held by that. And then right back here, we have a little tail on the trigger that pushes this hammer backwards until it slips off and drops the hammer. The hammer is powered by this flat spring right here, and that is basically everything going on in the firing mechanism. So it's going to rotate down until this snaps off. Let's see if I can do that without it coming apart. No, it sort of came apart. Right there, hammer hits the firing pin, hits the cartridge, and detonates. And then the return spring, this is all held in place by the top cover when the gun is assembled. There we go. One mistake I made when I wrote my initial blog post a couple years ago about this gun is I thought it was just the hammer that was actually keeping the whole thing locked. What I didn't think about was that the cartridges actually cannot be removed from this cylinder. They're actually held in place by this central wall in the gun. So the hammer doesn't have to hold the cartridge in the chamber. It's going to stay there regardless. In fact, on the original patent, there's a little trap door in the bottom that allegedly allows you to unload and reload the gun with it assembled. That does not exist on this particular model. So in order to reload this thing, to take the empties out and put new cartridges in, you actually have to disassemble it, take the top cover off, and remove the cylinder here, and then punch out the empty cases one by one. Well, there's the whole thing. Pretty cool, and very cool to actually have gotten a chance to look at one of these for real. So there you can see it's going to index the cylinder, drop the hammer, just like that. By 1909, of course, this was not exactly cutting edge, highly practical. There were a number of excellent semi-auto pistols already on the market that would offer really everything that this does for less weight, less bulk, and, well, probably greater reliability. The Colt 1903, the FN Browning 1900, the Savage 1907, all of these guns are available at this time. So McCarty's idea never went into production, never took off, and all we have left of it is a patent and a couple of handmade prototypes like this one. If you'd like to add it to your own collection, take a look at the description text below the video. You'll find a link there to Rock Island's catalog page on this guy. That has all of their pictures, their description, their price estimate, everything you would need to know to place a bid on it, live here at the auction or online through their website. Thanks for watching.